Hey, hey! Welcome to Generation Rise, the podcast with Marcus Bell. I am so grateful that you guys have stopped by to check me out. Listen, in addition to this podcast, I have my own company called the Rise Generation. And what the Rise Generation does is that I go into high school programs, college programs, and I do character development sessions with the athletes and teams at different programs. And at the high school that I'm coaching at right now, over the past couple of weeks, we have been talking about greatness, what it takes to be great, what it takes to be successful. I played them a clip from Kobe Bryant that talked about the cost of greatness, that how greatness has a cost associated with it, right? So I started to think, and what is the unwanted side to greatness? However, what is the essential side for greatness? And in my opinion, what is the prerequisite for greatness? Failure. Now let's be clear, in its very simple terms, failure means the lack of success. So it kind of goes against what you would think it would be for attaining greatness or being great or being successful. However, I believe that you have to fail some in order to succeed or to get to the point of being successful and being great. Kirk Franklin said it, that you cannot have progress without the process. And in a clip that I saw of Kirk Franklin, he used the analogy of baking a cake. And if you take the ingredients of a cake and you taste them and try to eat them individually, you try to taste flour individually, it doesn't taste good. You try to taste raw egg individually, it doesn't taste good. You try to taste the vanilla extract and by itself, it doesn't taste good. But when you get to the point of mixing all the ingredients together, when you get to the point of actually putting it in the pan and baking it, then once all of the process is done of bringing those ingredients together, then you have your finished product that tastes delicious and what you want to eat. But you have to take the cake through the process of mixing the ingredients, of being baked, put under the heat before it can turn into the product that you want it to be. So you cannot have progress without the process. The Bible says in Romans 5:3-5, more than that, we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, which has been given to us. The Bible says that we should expect to suffer. We should expect to have to suffer to produce the endurance, to produce the character that we need to succeed. The Bible also says in Proverbs 24:16, for the righteous falls 7 times and rises again, but the wicked stumble in times of calamity. So again, the Bible says that you should expect to fall. You should expect to fail, but when you fail, when you fall, you have to get up. You have to keep fighting. You have to continue to push forward to whatever it is that you want, whatever your goal is. Let's be clear about something. Nobody really wants to experience failure. Nobody likes failure. Who wants to fail? However, it is absolutely essential for growth and development. You have to fail to grow and develop. You learn far more about yourself in failure than you do in success. In failure, you learn what you can take. You learn the things that you can correct. You learn the things that you can do better. And you learn some of the things that you don't need to do again. From an athlete's perspective, think of it this way. When you win a game, oftentimes you can look past some of the mistakes that you made because you won. You had success, so I'm not going to worry about the mistakes that I made so much because we won anyway. However, when you fail, when you lose a game, then you're going to try to correct every single thing possible so that you get better and you don't have to feel that defeat again. You learn way more about yourself in failure than you do in success. Failures develop who you are as a person. Success only amplifies who you are. So, if you are unkind as you struggle, if you are stingy as you struggle, if you are a butthole as you struggle, when you get successful, those things are only going to magnify. You're not going to get money and success and then all of a sudden you are a person that's generous and you're giving handouts. You're not all of a sudden going to become a more humble and person that exercises humility when you get success. But failure has a way of humbling you. Failure has a way of forcing you to exercise a bit of humility that you wouldn't get in success. Think about that. When you overcome failure, you have a sense of accomplishment, a sense of earning something, a sense of actually putting in work to reach your goal. Now, I get it. As an athlete, I've heard this saying 1,000 times. Failure is not an option. You guys have probably heard the same thing. Failure is not an option. Failure is not an option. I get the mindset behind that. However, failure is only not an option when you fail, but you get up and you continue to pursue the goal that you're trying to get. Listen to that. Failure is only not an option when you fail and you continue to pursue your goal. So think of it like this. Think of a bow and arrow. In a bow and arrow, failures are like a setback, right? You fail, you get set back. With a bow and arrow, the arrow can only go forward with the most force after it's been pulled back. So when you're going after your goal, only thing that's happened is that your bow is getting pulled back a little bit more. A setback. I failed. Boom. Get pulled back a little bit. I didn't get the weight that I wanted to get up in the weight room. Get pulled back a little bit. I missed the block. Pull back a little bit. I turned the ball over. Get pulled back a little bit. I missed the game-winning shot. Get pulled back a little bit. At some point, you're going to get to the point where there's nothing left for you to do but to get propelled forward. So take these failures that you're having in pursuing your goal as you being pulled back to the point where at some point you're going to reach critical mass and you're going to have to be pulled forward. You're going to have to be pushed forward. Now, I would be remiss to talk about failure without talking about fear also. So failure is a big thing. A lot of people fail because they're scared of the failure. But what most of us have learned since the times that we were kids, the fear of something happening is oftentimes more than the result of what happens. So as a kid, you get told, you go to the diving board and you think, oh, I don't want to jump off the diving board. I might drown. I don't know if I can swim that well. So you get up to the edge of the diving board and you go back down the steps. You get up to the edge of the diving board and you kind of teeter-totter before you finally say, forget it, I'm going to jump in. And when you finally jump into the water, you get in and you're like, oh, it's not that bad. It is not as bad as I expected it to be. And now you're jumping off the diving board like you are a seasoned professional after just taking the leap one time. The fear of failure hurts more than failure itself. Now, I can promise you, this is something that I've experienced in my own life. This message is something that speaks to me probably just as much, if not more, than it speaks to you guys. But what I can also promise you is that what hurts more than fear itself is having to live with the regret associated with being paralyzed by the fear and failure, being paralyzed by the fear of failure, causing you not to move at all. That's going to hurt more than anything. So there are many types of fear. You have fear of failure. We just talked about the fear of failure, but on the flip side of that, there is a fear of success. Now, I know that doesn't make sense in some of you guys' mind, but let me tell you a story. So, last week was the first week that I posted my podcast. My wife had been telling me about, oh, maybe you need to post some stuff online and start a podcast. Some people from church had been telling me, maybe you should start a podcast. And I was kind of like, I don't know about that. I don't really want to be out there in that type of way. In my mind, my company was supposed to be kind of a face-to-face type of a thing, as I do with the Rise Generation by going into the schools and different programs. But I decided, okay, I need to reach more people. And I felt like God gave me a word in Exodus 9:16, which says, I have raised you for this purpose, so that I may show you my power and that my name may be proclaimed all over the earth. Now, for me, that means that what I have to say is supposed to reach people around the earth. I can't reach everybody around the earth if all I'm doing is going through giving sessions around Washington, D.C. and Baltimore and the areas that I'm immediately accessible to. However, the internet gives us the power to reach people all over the world. So I decided to go forward and throw out the podcast. Now, a few days after I posted the podcast, I got a feeling in my spirit that said, post it on all your social media and everything. But then it also told me to post it and send it directly to Bradley Beal. Now, for those of you who don't know, Bradley Beal is an NBA player for the Washington Wizards. And I composed a message on Twitter to send it to Bradley Beal that day. And I got all the way to the point of clicking submit, but I backed out and I never submit the message. Now, a couple of days later, I rethought it and I went out and I sent the message and nothing's happened. But here's the thing. What if I would have immediately moved on the prompting to send that message to Bradley Beal? What if by chance Bradley Beal happened to be looking at his phone when I sent that message and he had nothing else to do, so he checked out my podcast, he liked it, and then he retweeted it and posted it on his stuff, and who knows what could have happened. That could have changed my life instantly. But since I let the fear jump in and overtake me, I never sent that message at that time. Right? So the fear for me was, if that goes viral, then my life changes. So there's a fear of change there as well. Not just the success, but there's a fear of change. Because with change comes new people coming around. With change comes the pressure to have to perform consistently, to perform at a high level, to perform up to expectations. So sometimes we fail because we have a fear of actually failing, so we don't actually step up to the plate to take a swing. But we also fail because we're scared of what success may bring. The change that it may bring. It may bring change in the people that are around you. Your circle may change. You may have envy and jealousy from the people around you. Oh, this guy's been putting in all this work. He's become a 5-star recruit in football or basketball or baseball. And now your friends are looking at you sideways because they think you've changed. No, you didn't change. You just outworked them, so you're no longer on the same level. So now you're getting a different kind of response from people that they can't get, and not everybody can be happy in your success, in your greatness, in your calling. Everybody can't be happy for you. So that means that your people around you will change. Your environments may change. Your status may change, and not everybody is going to be able to walk with you where you're going. So just like there's a fear of failure, there's a fear of success, there's a fear of change. But courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to face the fear and do it anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to face the fear and do it anyway. Think about that. Think about that. How many times have you been fearful of doing something, so it stopped you? But had you just taken that step, things could have changed instantly. Things could have changed in a great way for you. So don't give in to the fear. Don't give in to the fear of failure. Don't give in to the fear of success. Don't give in to the fear of change. Because some of the things that we're asking for and we're believing for, the change that we're asking for is going to require you to overcome the fear associated with that to get to that change that you want, to get to that success that you want, to get to the goal and the dream and the greatness that you want. So, do you guys know who Thomas Edison is? That's a rhetorical question. Thomas Edison is the inventor of the light bulb. Now, as I read about Thomas Edison a little bit, it said that Thomas Edison failed 1,000 times to make the light bulb. He failed 1,000 times. How many of you are willing to fail 1,000 times to reach your goal, to be great, to do what you've been called to do, to fail 1,000 times at it? In my reading, it said that a reporter asked him, how does it feel to fail 1,000 times? And his perspective on failing 1,000 times to invent the light bulb was, I didn't fail 1,000 times. The light bulb was an invention with 1,000 steps. Wow, that is like mind-blowing that he said it's not a failure. It just had 1,000 steps. So everybody's journey is different. Everybody's journey is different. Your journey may take you to the left. Somebody else's journey might take them straight down the road. But everybody's journey is unique to them and what they need to prepare them for where they're going. Thomas Edison said, many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. Don't give up. Don't give up. You can do it. You just have to keep pushing. Every part of the journey prepares you that much more for where you are going. But the key is that you cannot give up. You fail, take it as a lesson. Take it as a lesson. As long as you learn from your failures, then you're continuing to grow, you're continuing to develop, you're continuing to make progress towards your goal. However, if you only look at your failures as some kind of anomaly or something that just happened by chance or as something that you don't need to reflect on to grow, then you're going to get stuck where you are and you're never going to be able to get to where you want to go. No failures, only lessons. So, the other person I want to talk to you about is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of people know who he is, but do you know his story? So as I read up on The Rock, as he's known more popularly, and I've listened to different podcasts and different interviews and things that he's given about himself, The Rock was, before he became a wrestler and a movie star and before he started doing all these different amazing things that he's doing, he was a football player at the University of Miami. He was a defensive lineman. He, as a freshman, didn't start, but he got a lot of playing time. So if you're a freshman and you're getting a lot of playing time, you think your next year is going to be your time to shine. So you're thinking, hey, it's my time. I'm about to move into the starting role. I'm about to get busy. The problem is that before the season started, from what I read, as he was going into the defensive line meeting room, a guy by the name of Warren Sapp was in the room. Now, Warren Sapp was also on the Miami football team, but he started as a tight end, but moved over to the defensive line. Now, for those of you who don't know about Warren Sapp is a Hall of Fame defensive lineman. Some people may even argue that he may be one of the greatest defensive linemen to ever play the game. So The Rock goes into the meeting room and he says, "What are you doing here?" And Warren Sapp says, "I'm here to take your spot." And a few months later, Warren Sapp had actually taken his job. So I would say most athletes, if you get your job taken, that's a failure. Right? So The Rock was still on the team. He was still getting reps, but he was not drafted by the NFL by the time he graduated college. Failure. After he went undrafted, he went to the Canadian Football League, got cut within the first year. Failure. His story goes on, and he went back home. He had $7 in his pocket, $7 in his pocket, and his dad and his grandfathers were professional wrestlers. So he called his dad and he said, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to go into the family business. I'm going to work to be a wrestler." So he goes into wrestling, the WWF, and he first comes into wrestling as a guy by the name of Rocky Maivia. Now, Rocky Maivia had a bunch of hype behind him. The WWF had basically marketed him as the first third generation wrestler, and he had all of this hype and everything about him, and he was doing decent as a good guy wrestler. But at some point, people started to turn on him, and they got tired of the good guy act. They got tired of the smile and everything like that. And he had gotten to the point where Vince McMahon, the owner of the WWF, was like, "This isn't really working out." And The Rock said, "Well, before you make any changes, before you do anything, give me like 30 seconds or a minute on camera to just let me be myself, to let me do it my way, and then we'll see where it goes from there." So Vince McMahon gave him the opportunity. He got on the camera and he completely changed himself. He completely changed himself, and from that day, The Rock was born. So he went from a good guy to a bad guy, and then he started to ascend up the ranks of the WWE, of the WWF at the time. He became a superstar in wrestling by switching and becoming himself and coming into himself. And he became one of the most popular wrestlers ever. Arguably the most popular wrestler ever. But if you take a look at his story, he had to fail several times, but continuing to push forward before he got to the point of being one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, before becoming a movie star, before doing all of the great things that he's doing now. When he was at the University of Miami, he played with a Hall of Famer in Warren Sapp. He played with Ray Lewis. He played with a ton of other NFL guys. But if you look at the longevity of his career and what he's doing now, you can argue that he's more successful than a lot of those guys. He is more popular and more known than a lot of those guys. He's made more money than a lot of those guys. Even though his journey was different, he was still able to go on and be successful. He was still able to go find his greatness. But he had to be different. He had to be himself. He had to find himself to go attain his greatness. Find yourself, guys. Go find out what works for you and go be great at it. Maya Angelou says, you may encounter many defeats. You must not be defeated. In fact, it may be necessary to encounter the defeats so that you can know who you are, what you can rise from, how you can still come out of it. So I have one question to ask you guys. Have you failed enough? Have you failed enough to be great? Have you failed enough to be successful? Have you failed enough to reach your goal and to reach your dream? Have you failed enough? Guys, thank you for joining me again. And I hope that you come back and join me again next week on my next podcast. If you guys want to reach out to me, give me feedback on what you're hearing from me, have any questions, topics that you want addressed, anything like that, you can email me at bell.risent, RISEENT, @gmail.com. You can reach out to me on Twitter at RiseENT1 and the number 1. You can reach out to me on Instagram at The Rise Generation or on YouTube at Generation Rise. Again, thank you for joining me. I hope you'll join me again next time. God bless you. I love you. Now go be great.